This episode is sponsored by Free Market Kids. Join the league of families who are transforming family time into unforgettable Bitcoin learning experiences. With our HODL Up Bitcoin mining board game, you're not just playing, you're building bridges, creating memories, and unlocking the brilliance of the future one block at a time.
Hi everyone, welcome to Bitcoin Homeschoolers. Today we're going to address something that Talia and I struggled with for the entire time, the 2 decades that we homeschooled, and that was trying to find local resources to supplement what we wanted to teach our kids. And today we sit down with Kalani and Tyler. They are helping to fill this void with a nonprofit organization that they have founded. It is called Haskel Academy. I think you're going to really enjoy. Here we go.
When Tyler mentioned the idea of why isn't there a centralized hub somewhere where people can go and locate quality teachers, I just thought, this is an excellent idea and I can't believe it doesn't exist and we have to do this.
The name Haskel was my grandfather's middle name, and he never officially finished 4th grade, but he was one of the wisest men I ever knew.
Then they could flourish, and it's mutually beneficial, right, for them and for the families. And so it's not just for the student, it's also for the educators.
So welcome to Bitcoin Homeschoolers. It's so amazing to have Tyler and his lovely wife, Kalani, with us tonight. We're going to dive into their experience in homeschooling and the very exciting resource they're working on as a passion project. So
Yeah. Welcome, guys.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. We appreciate the time.
Yeah, we appreciate yours. Let's start off, tell the audience just so they have an idea of who you guys are. Do a quick introduction of yourselves.
My name is Tyler Gay, and I grew up in East Tennessee. Originally lived most of my life in Tennessee, and as I was growing up, my parents, when I was in 1st grade, my parents decided to do this weird thing called homeschooling in the 90s. You know, it's a different time. Yeah, so they decided that they were going to try that out on my brother and me, and it was kind of a newish thing. I know it's been happening for a long time, but for kind of this area that we lived in East Tennessee, very rural East Tennessee, they would buy curriculum. We would go through the curriculum kind of in a traditional homeschool environment, kind of what you would expect with the mom and dad teaching, the kids, kind of different subjects from math to English and all of that. As we were getting older, my parents felt uncomfortable with the idea of teaching certain subjects like physics, chemistry, Spanish, some of these other more high school level courses. And so they got involved in a co-op, which I'm sure most of your listeners are familiar with. And we had classmates. My brother and I had classmates. We met in a church that would open their doors every Tuesday and let us meet there. And as we were kind of finding the needs that weren't being met by the co-op, we would find teachers in the community that taught different subjects. For example, my Spanish teacher, it was from Cuba and taught Spanish. And my algebra teacher taught in the Nashville public school system for many years and stopped doing that. And so that helped us kind of round out our education as we were progressing through high school. And so I was essentially homeschooled from 2nd grade all the way through high school, and then went into college and then eventually graduated.
Yeah, so I'm Kalani. I also was raised in East Tennessee in a small town called Dayton, where there is a small Christian college. My dad was a professor there of mathematics. So my 3 sisters and I all went to the public schools, and really we had a great experience, public school all the way from kindergarten through high school. Let's say my experience was marked with, you had some really great teachers and then others who were they're mostly to be sports coaches. And then they had their teaching duties on the side that were not their full focus, truly. And I think that I didn't realize how much my parents were just naturally supplementing my education, just having a father who was involved in higher ed. And most of my sisters, so my oldest sister ended up becoming a librarian, and my two other sisters were elementary education teachers until the other two decided to stay home and homeschool their children. So that was kind of my first introduction into the homeschooling community. And yes, I thought they were a little nuts at first, and I was worried about socialization and things like that. And just seeing how they've raised my nieces and nephews so well has inspired me now that we have a son who is 7 months old, has really shown me how well it can be done. And then hearing Tyler's story about how he was raised and how his parents were able to source excellent teachers for him, and just having that comparison between our two educations has been so eye-opening for me. And I'm really excited for what our son Alexi's education is going to look like once he gets a little bit older. So when Tyler, well, not to go too far into Haskel Academy yet, but when Tyler mentioned the idea of why isn't there a centralized hub somewhere where people can go and locate quality teachers, I just thought this is an excellent idea, and I can't believe it doesn't exist. And we have to do this. And this was before kids were even on our mind. We just needed to do it for everyone. People should have options. So I know I'm going too far into
No.
the conversation now, but
No, this is fine.
Can I ask a different question for the trajectory of the conversation
Go
before
for
we
it.
jump into Bitcoin? So, Tyler, my question for you is, why did your parents decide to do this weird thing called homeschooling way back in the 1990s, before people were starting to realize how bad the public school system is? And then for Kalani, why did your sisters decide to homeschool when they were not homeschooled themselves?
Yeah, so I'll go first. My parents, when I got to first grade, there were some challenges, I think, with some of the way things were being done in the classroom that my parents didn't want to continue with for me at that time. And it it kind of led down this path. We had this family friend that was homeschooling at the time, and my mom just started conversations with her and asking her about her experience. And while there's this tension of, the school and classroom environment that she didn't feel was healthy for me, she was also having these conversations about, oh, well, what is homeschooling? What does it look like? How does it work? And so I think it was kind of a perfect storm all at the same time, where she said, we're just in conversation with my dad, of course, we're going to do this. We're going to homeschool. And they pulled me out of grade school, at second grade, basically, and started from there on.
and then with my sisters, the two who decided to homeschool, because one sent her kids to public school, but the other two were largely influenced by their husbands initially. Both of them had been teaching in the public school system, and so they had seen the challenges and issues going on there already. But the first one, her husband also worked in the public school system, and he said, I don't want my kids being taught in this environment. And the other sister, her husband actually was homeschooled as well. And so he already saw the benefits of how he was raised.
I wonder, have you talked to them about what's in the schools today? I mean, because things, as far as I know, have progressed in a bad way since then. Have you talked to them about what's going on with schools currently? How old are the kids, I guess, now? Are they past they're past the high school age,
Uh,
right?
Some are.
yes, the first one who decided to homeschool, her oldest is in college, and the second one, her oldest is 11. So they've been out of the school system for quite a
Mm,
while now.
right. Okay.
Yeah.
I just see a lot of headlines and
But
maybe I'm reading into things. So,
well, and watching from a distance, right? You see the headlines, you see the stories about how many families that are in that environment. And I think the kind of response to COVID brought a lot of this to light, where more parents who maybe were in the dark before about what was happening in these schools were seeing the Zoom calls, the interactions, interactive interactions, and just decided, after that, well, we're not going back. And I think it's kind of created this movement that's moving more and more, where this becomes on all sides of the issue. I've talked to people from different backgrounds and different viewpoints that all share homeschooling, or at least kind of getting out of that traditional model, as being more and more accepted in all backgrounds. And so that's encouraging, I think, for us to see that options are on the table, and that people are becoming aware of them.
right. And you have some control. You don't just have to accept what's given to you. You can, if you want to take action, you do have choices that you can take. So,
Yes.
Yeah. And
cool.
Go ahead.
if we could go back to the story, I was going to tie it into like how we met,
Yeah, please
and then
do.
kind of get into that Bitcoin question too.
Yeah, please
If that's
do.
okay.
Just keep going.
Perfect.
Tali and I are just going to sit here and you guys will, we're
So,
good.
so Kalani and I met in college at that school that her dad was a professor at in East Tennessee in Dayton, and we didn't really talk all that much in college.
We were in different disciplines, so we didn't run
Yeah,
into each other very often.
I was a business major. You were
A Spanish
Spanish
major.
major. And so we didn't interact all that much, but we did kind of meet and hung out more after college. So we both moved to the Chattanooga area, Chattanooga, Tennessee, and she moved in 2013, I think it was, moved to the DC area and went to American University for your master's. And she got a job with an organization in the DC area, and we were talking, and she said, "Hey, I work for this organization. You should really check it out. I think it would fit in your kind of what your passion is." And I'm through college. I had a professor that was very Austrian school economics
Nice.
professor that kind of required reading was Henry Hazlitt's Economics in One Lesson. We read G. Edward Griffin's The Creature from Jekyll Island, which is a great book, by the way, and it's, among other things, right? And so that kind of opened my eyes a little more to libertarian thought, and I kind of became more and more following the campaign of Ron Paul in 2008, and then later in 2012, and so kind of got connected to that. And naturally, there's this part of that community, if you're familiar with them, that are kind of tied into Bitcoin and familiar with it, understanding the dangers of fiat money and government kind of having unlimited control over the money supply. And so naturally, Bitcoin was just one of those things that I had heard about from very early on, and was interested in, but never took the time to actually look at. And so going back to that, she told me about this organization. Long story short, I moved to the DC area and lived in Arlington, Virginia, until we got married, which was in 2020. But all this time, one of the first guys I met at the job I had was huge into Bitcoin, and he was really into it. So anyway, I didn't actually get into Bitcoin until, I guess it was maybe 2018, 2019, where I actually started to. I think that was after the spike. Unfortunately, I didn't get in before that. So, but it was always on my radar. Like, I've heard about it for years, and I knew I needed to, and I just never did, and I kick myself to this day.
Yeah,
for not
someday though,
taking it
someone's gonna
earlier.
look back and they'll still call you early. So okay,
Yeah,
so you guys have
true.
this. You've seen the contrast of public versus homeschooling, and you're clearly familiar with Austrian economics and some libertarian ideas. So, all right, I'm curious. So now I'm trying to connect the dots to how we met with. We're talking about Haskel Academy. I would like to understand the inspiration, and I imagine there's some things out of the things we just talked about that help shape what you're trying to do with Haskell.
Yeah. Yeah, so while I'm working at this place in DC, I had a good core group of friends that we shared a lot of the same values in kind of the libertarian thought and ideas of human liberty and freedom and just kind of advancing those things. And so I kind of approach um, how I view the world through that lens a lot of times, and I start to think through problems of how do we how do we get people voluntarily cooperating in a way that doesn't require coercion or doesn't require someone mandating that you do X, Y, and Z? And so almost everything I look at life through that lens, which is sounds exhausting. It kind of is sometimes. But one of those things was education. And so I thought through my experience being homeschooled and how it was this a la carte experience of there was some of this traditional homeschooling. When you hear homeschooling, you think with the parents kind of teaching the child. Went through that, early on. And then as I got older, it was like, okay, well, now let's bring in these other people. And so kind of crowdsourcing or a la carte education experience. And so it was like, well, how do we make that more approachable for more people? Or at least get them aware of thinking about here are your options. Because a lot of people, they do what they're familiar with. Maybe their parents went to public school, their friends went to public school, they went to public school, their friends are sending their kids to public school. And then for those that have enough money, they might send their kids to private school, right? And so that might not be available or on the table for everyone. So the thought was, how do we show people that, well, you can do this in a way that's not quite as expensive as public school or a private school and doesn't have you following this older model of education.
I was going to say it's also twofold in the sense that we want to support educators. So my family is all educators, and I saw how difficult it was for them when they were in the public school system in general. And I have a lot of friends who are teachers, and I have a lot of respect for teachers in general, any type of educator. And I just think that they get swept into the system where their only options are to teach in a private institution or a public institution. And I think if they were allowed to structure their own classes and felt that they had the support needed in order to make enough money to do it on their own and have those connections, then they could flourish, and it's mutually beneficial, right, for them and for the families. And so it's not just for the student, it's also for the educators. We want them to see that they have options because so many of them especially suffered during COVID because there were unrealistic expectations put on them and they were stretched in so many different ways. And that's just beyond the normal pain points that they might have. And so it really is meant to be all around helpful for families as well as educators.
Yeah. Yeah, and it ties in nicely with that voluntary cooperation, right? And where it's like, how do we get people peacefully to say, I have something that you want and you have something that I want, and how do we exchange so that we get that in a way that's voluntary without, kind of that coercion or compulsion. So thinking through that, how the idea kind of came about was through that, where I was just thinking about all these different things. And so we talked a lot about this before we even started what would later become Haskell Academy, which is haskelacademy.com. And that's HASKEL1L Academy. It's the idea came in that organic way, but we were bouncing ideas off each other for a long time, months. It took us forever to decide on a name, which I'll get into the name. There is a significance to that as well here in just a minute, but it was like, well, how do we create a marketplace or a place where you can go online and you say, I want to learn Spanish, or I want my child to learn physics or chemistry or play sports, basketball or soccer, or go to dance club or chess club, or anything that supports families outside of that traditional school system. We want to help make those connections. So that's where the idea came from, and the inspiration was creating. Yelp was a big one. I don't know if you're familiar with Yelp or not, but it's like, I want a steak tonight, and I type in steakhouse, and I can find all the steakhouse restaurants near me, where they are, what their hours are, and all that. And so that was a big part of the model. Another part of the model was Uber, how Uber kind of has created this competition for the taxi industry, where you get on the app and you find someone near you that can connect you to places. So that's kind of where the concept came from. And we were surprised to see that nothing, like Kalani said, nothing like that really existed. There are sites out there that do the virtual thing, where you can go learn a virtual subject, and those are great for if that's what you're looking for and you want to go that route. But we focus on, and we have virtual profiles and teachers on our site, but our main focus are those in-person interactions, those the concerned parent that asks, how do I get my kids socialized with other kids, and meeting friends, and playing sports, or doing book clubs and chess clubs and all these things that are fun, that bring joy to life. How do we get those people connected? And so that's kind of where the idea came from.
I love the idea because like we were talking about before, the number one concern for people who are even starting to think about homeschooling is always the socialization part of it. And virtual programs are great, but it's just not the same. Looking at somebody through a screen versus looking at them in person. The other thing that I have heard some people questioning is a lot of co-ops, I don't know about in Tennessee, but a lot of co-ops are very religiously oriented. And so for people who are not of that denomination or not of that faith, then they feel like they shouldn't participate, and they're sort of left out, dangling out, floating around looking for other people to connect with, because the bulk of the homeschoolers would be okay with faith-based co-ops and things like that.
Yeah, and so this concept helps, I think, open up some options, right? No matter what your background or your beliefs are, you have a way to find what's in your area. And I would challenge, I guess the challenge to your listeners is think about that thing that you know something about, that you could share with others, that others might want to learn. Can you come to some mutually beneficial agreement with other people and share that knowledge with them? I think that's key, and it's anyone can do it. Now I know there are laws and there's certain hoops that you might have to jump through if you're running an official, like a micro school or something like that. But getting that process started and exploring what it means to be an entrepreneur or an edupreneur, and that's a term that other people have used. Edupreneur, someone who creates a business or an organization that helps educate, I think is fantastic. And that's the heart of what we want to inspire in other people too, is like, hey, you can do this. We need people, good quality people out there helping teach the future.
I also just like that you guys are making it happen. So a lot of people will complain about something, say something's bad or something's broken or something's missing. It's another thing to actually get up and say, I'm going to be the one to figure out how to do it. That's that entrepreneur type of thing that you're talking about. But it's easy to talk about. It's very hard to do. And it takes some true passion, because it's going to be, I mean, it's like we talk about proof of work. you're going to have to put in the work to make this kind of marketplace come together. So, just from a process standpoint, you're going to start with where you are in Tennessee and then grow from there. What are your kind of, where are you in this vision?
So we are still in the early stages. We started with a very rudimentary website that was a form fill. So the concept of Haskell Academy is it's a place where teachers, co-ops, micro schools, clubs, sports teams, anyone that's serving those out of the traditional school system market can go online and create a free profile. So it's basically kind of like Yelp, going back to that example where you've got this restaurant and here are their hours and their rating and do they have outdoor seating? Are they good for groups? Blah, blah, blah. You've got all this stuff listed. The idea here is to do that, but with education in a decentralized way. So giving entrepreneurs, people who are starting their organizations, their co-ops, micro schools, tutor services, giving them a place to list their services and be searchable, so parents and families can go online and search physics or guitar or Spanish and pull up all the people in your area that teach those subjects, and you interact with them directly. It's free. We're exploring some potentially premium features in the future, but the base profiles will be free so that there's the low barrier to entry. We understand that some people are just trying to get off the ground, get their organization off the ground and get started and get their name out there. And so we want to be sensitive to that too. Mm. So going back to your question, I think I've lost my train of thought. What was the question?
Well, no, I was just trying to put it together, the vision of what you're trying to create and like what step you were in. So I think you kind of answered that. There was another thing that you had mentioned earlier. You wanted to explain the name and the inspiration for that. Maybe you could touch on that.
Yeah. So the name Haskell was my grandfather's middle name. And he never officially finished fourth grade, but he was one of the wisest men I ever knew. And he had to drop out of school at an early age to help with the work, basically help work to support his family early on. And throughout his life, he sourced his education in the non-traditional sense, from so many different people, through his job, through his friends, through people in the community. And he just really inspiring figure. He's, to me and to those that knew him. He passed away in 2020, but his legacy lives on through this and through that spirit of putting together an education in a non-traditional way outside of the mainstream method. So that's where the name comes from. And right now we're still new. We started with a very basic website. Teachers would go online and fill out a form fill, and we would create manually a web page for them. There was no map. There was a search function, but it was very basic. And so now, through a grant that we got through an organization called the Vela Education Fund, who I highly recommend, they give small micro grants to entrepreneurs, people starting micro schools, people starting organizations, kind of supporting that out of market, out of traditional market. We got a grant from them, and that helped us take our website to the next level. So now it's a searchable map, interactive. You can go around and zoom in on different areas. Right now we have 58 profiles, so we're just under 60. So we're still new, we're still growing. Most of those profiles are in Tennessee, but we have some in Georgia, Florida, Virginia. We've got one as far north as Maryland, and just kind of growing out, right? Mm-hmm. And so we're looking for anyone that runs a co-op or helps, was a teacher at a micro school or has started a micro school themselves, or tutors, anything like that outside of that traditional system, there's no reason not to be on this site. It's free. There's no charge, and it helps make you searchable for searching families. Now, I know there may be some people out there that don't want to be found, and that's okay. But if you do want to be found, this is a great way to help do that and let you focus as an entrepreneur. Let you focus on doing what you do best, which is teaching, and will help you help other people find you. We do some Facebook ads and things like that too, so that helps that might not otherwise see it.
Another great feature of the website is that the folks posting their own profiles have control of their profiles, so they can go in and change and say, yes, I'm accepting new students right now, no, I'm not, or here's my schedule. If you want to join one of these courses, you can contact me. You can contact them within the website itself. So if you want potential students to reach out to you, but you don't necessarily want them having your personal information yet, they can reach out on this platform without having to exchange personal information yet. So lots of different things, and we have so many ideas going forward for how we can make this even better. But as far as populating our map and getting more educators on there, we've tabled multiple events in South Carolina, here in Chattanooga. We'd like to get to one in Missouri and one in Georgia at some point next year. But we've tabled a lot of homeschool conventions, and time after time, we have just seen the educators' eyes light up. They're so excited. And not only that, but the homeschool families as well. I think everyone has seen the value in it. So it's just a matter of getting people used to going there and using this tool so that it can benefit more people. So if you have students and want to check it out, or if you want to pass it along to any friends or family who you know might be looking, please do so. The more people using it, the more valuable it becomes to everyone.
Yeah, I think having attended a couple of homeschooling conventions, you get both sides of your marketplace. You need to get the word out for the parents to know this is a resource that can help you. You also need to get the word out to the people who are offering those services that are trying to connect with the consumers of it, the parents who are going to pay for it. So that is an interesting thing. It does require some boots on the ground. Again, you're getting back to the it's going to take some work to get it out there. Absolutely worthwhile though. So I think that makes a lot of sense to me in terms of a step to go. So
Thank you.
yeah.
It's really exciting too. We have recently started putting together a board of directors. And so we've got advisors coming in to really help us become more established and continue
Mm-hmm.
driving this forward.
Are you I'm trying to remember. Are you a 501c3?
Yes.
You are.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So
Yep.
you could also then people could donate as well and get their tax benefit for having supported an organization too. Yeah.
Yes, and that is a huge thing right now. Like as far as needs go, we need sharing this resource is the best thing anyone can do, because we need the awareness. We need people like seeing it and understanding it exists, and just how easy it is to get started as an entrepreneur or someone who's serving out of the traditional marketplace, kids and families. But that donation is huge. Like I was saying before, we don't charge for the profiles, we don't charge for the searching. It's all run right now on donations and our pockets. And my parents are also generous with this project, which has been great. And then the Vela grant that I mentioned before has been really helpful.
Like
Well,
that.
I think that just knowing this resource exists is huge because a lot of the new homeschooling families will be specifically looking for this. So when our kids were going through the homeschooling process, one of the most helpful things to me were the homeschooling classes that were offered by non-homeschooling organizations. Like the local gymnastics team, they would have a homeschooling class. And the local swim school would have a specific hour for homeschooling students. And those things are just really time consuming to find, because I was looking up like every venue out there and then calling them and then finding out, because these are like one class at a location. It's not like a co-op where you go and it's 25 classes taught by 25 teachers. It's one class, one location. So those are the ones that I think would be really valuable to the homeschooling families because they are so hard to find.
Another thing we hadn't mentioned yet is how helpful this hopefully will become for parents of children with special needs, because they are in need of resources all the time, outside of the traditional school system and in concert with whatever support they already have. So we could see this being a really useful tool for those parents too. This is not exclusively for homeschooling families, although I think it most naturally caters to that demographic. It also could be supplementing. So if you've decided, well, I really just want my kid to go to a public school right now, just for where we are at this season of life, but I'd like to supplement with a language or give them like a higher level math course. I could see this being helpful for that as well. It doesn't exclusively have to be for people who are only homeschooling. So I just wanted to clarify that too.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Kalani. I think there's application even for adults potentially, right?
Oh,
Because
yes,
it's
definitely.
like, how do you, like, if I wanted to learn a foreign language or an instrument like guitar, piano, anything like that, I'm an adult and I just want to find somebody who can teach that subject that lives near my house. I can just go online and find them too that way. So,
And as someone who works full time for a nonprofit organization separately as my full time day job, I also teach Spanish on the side here, and so I have a profile in there. Don't look at it right now, but it gives me that outlet to be able to use my master's degree, right, and something that I'm passionate about. Maybe I can't use it in my full time job right now, but I'm able to supplement by teaching Spanish on the side. And so that's been really enjoyable for me as well.
I want to highlight if you're a Bitcoin homeschooler, you already have knowledge that you could maybe help other people with. So thinking of yourself as a resource, in that if you've set up a wallet, or you've got, and from even just the whole self custody standpoint of that, and of Bitcoin, and taking ownership and sharing that knowledge, how to get people started. Because I think on the Bitcoin side, we're still on the front end of this thing. Scott, I think you mentioned that earlier. We're on the front end of this thing, and there are people out there that maybe would join in, that don't have a way to do that, or don't know how to get started. I know that was my biggest hurdle. Once I learned how to do it, it was easy, right? Like I mean, easy enough, easy enough to continue participating. So sharing that knowledge with others, or any knowledge that you have, I think is key. And I think co-ops give you that opportunity as a parent to be kind of more involved. Obviously, like you said, the site is meant to be a resource for families to use to find whatever it is they're looking for outside of that. So whether you're looking for a micro school that's like Monday through Friday, normal schedule, maybe you work and you don't want to send your kid to public school for whatever reason, you can find a micro school in your area that has maybe 10, 12 other students, and you all do classes together and things. That's kind of the more like managed, right? More full service side. Or maybe you're homeschooling from your kitchen table, and you need to find that one thing. Maybe it's Spanish, maybe it's guitar, or maybe it's a sports club or something like that. This is a resource for you as well. So we're trying to build this list actively, and we encourage folks that have things to share like that to go on and take that step. But I'll highlight one other thing for those that are looking, that are outside of the traditional system. There's the Vela Education Fund. I mentioned that before. It's an organization that gives micro grants to edupreneurs that are trying to change the conversation around education and like how that happens and what that looks like, and help people that are doing that entrepreneurial thing, help them get started. So I recommend that as a resource as well for those
Yeah,
searching.
I'm thinking of something else while you're talking too, and that is it's almost the common question of where do I go and get a resource, right? It's a very I'm looking to consume something, information. It's a course, it's a book, it's a whatever, and I'm trying to think back now on our experience homeschooling. Part of homeschooling is giving, right? So if you have done something, if you like you were mentioning a few there, like you set up a wallet, maybe whatever your hobby is, but if you've learned about Bitcoin and you know more than the next whoever it is, like in this case, kids or other homeschooling parents, I think there's a call to action there too. Like you're part of this is going to be giving, and if you give in a co-op, you're going to get a benefit because now you're going to meet somebody else who has a different skill. So there's the momentum there, the lesson there, that it's not just about I need to consume, where can I go get this resource? Some of this is about finding other people who might have what you need or might need what you have to offer. And even if you think it's small, to give a little bit. I'm just trying to think of some of the co-ops that we participated in. It can literally be anything. I mean, you could have a hobby doing, you could be woodworking, you could be, maybe you speak Chinese, maybe you, I don't know, in this case, maybe you like to do some Bitcoining and you can teach people how the wallet works. Or you read Lynn Alden's book and you want to go teach on money or something. It doesn't have to be a lot, right?
I love that, and this is where I think it's this episode is not just for folks that are new parents or expecting parents, right? Like if you're sitting there and you have an entrepreneurial spirit, and you know maybe you don't have kids, maybe your kids are grown, and or maybe you're teaching in the public school system now, and you want to cut back on hours, or you want to set your own schedule, or you want to try something different. This is a resource for you to help you get found and challenged. I think it would be so cool, and this probably exists somewhere out there, a Bitcoin course, right, where you're teaching folks from all different ages, really, how to set up a wallet, what it means to self custody, and truly understand dangers, potential dangers and scams and things. And maybe you play Huddle Up in one of the classes, and like it just like I feel like there's so much you could do there. It's so exciting, like to think about all the different possibilities of things you could start sharing.
Well,
So
you can do that today, even if you don't. If you wanted to give in your community, wherever you are, you can go and get the Meet Premier diploma for free today, and use that your curriculum's done, your workbook's done, and they have great links to videos and things. And all you need to do is then go to a co-op and say, I'm willing to basically be the facilitator, and the course materials are already done for you, right? So
Actually, can I interject there? So I've had several Bitcoiners ask me about how to infiltrate the homeschooling community and offer classes like that. And the issue I see
Infiltrate?
Infiltrate.
okay,
Because we are assuming that these families are not yet Bitcoiners, because otherwise they would be teaching that themselves. So the problem, well, not the problem, the challenge of trying to enter those existing co-ops is you always have one or two people who are gatekeepers. And unless you can convince those one or two people that what you're doing is legitimate, you don't get in. But the benefit of your website is that you skip the gatekeepers. Because if the parents know about you and they decide they want to know, they want their kids to know about Bitcoin, then they can find the educators regardless of the gatekeepers. So this can be a way of decentralizing the homeschooling resources / co-ops.
we're big on decentralizing and in
Okay.
a centralized way, like
Yeah.
getting it all together, right? But
Yeah.
I so that person is offer an economics course, right? Like, and then cap it off at the end with Bitcoin
Mm.
and talk about the history of money. And that's something I feel like high schoolers would enjoy.
It's very needed.
Could enjoy, yeah, and it's very needed. I feel like there's a lot of economic illiteracy in our
Mm.
society today. So yeah, I think just being a little innovative there, like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
maybe I'll, instead of teaching Bitcoin full on, I'll start with economics and the history of
Mm.
money, and then
That's
lead
part. It's
into,
part of the history.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's important. Yeah.
All right. We'll obviously have a link to Haskel Academy in there. What else would you like to include? Any other recommendations for people to go check out? I know we just asked resources, so it's kind of the same question, but just kind of a final
Mhm.
call out or final thoughts, because I feel like
Social media.
I think we've hit the main points that this is a resource. It's out there. It's new, and it's building momentum. People should certainly check it out if they have a family or if they're interested in teaching and getting something going in their area, because it does take some action.
Yeah. I think just kind of highlighting one thing of where I think this fits, kind of fills a void. And the challenge that we're trying to look for is the knowledge of what resources are available to you in your area. And most of this homeschooling thing is word of mouth. It's who do you know? And if you move to a new state or a new city, or you don't know anyone, or you only have one friend and they don't know anybody, like that can be a very alienating place to be as a parent who's trying to provide an education for their kids. So we hope to try to solve for that knowledge problem of who do you know, and not having to know necessarily anyone, but having this resource where you can find people in your area. um
Hey Tyler,
the other
I have
is,
an idea. I don't know
yeah,
if you've already tried this, but every new homeschooler has to go through the same process, the same gate, which is whatever the state requirement is.
right.
So the majority of them will hit the HSDLA site.
Oh
Right.
yeah.
Is it
Mhm.
possible for you to partner with them, because then you can hit them right when they decide to homeschool?
That's a great thought. We have that. Yeah, that might be something we could do.
Because you're a
Uh,
nonprofit, so I feel like you would have a better way in than a for-profit company.
yeah, yeah, that's a great thought. Maybe we look at doing something like
Yeah.
that. I think that's key. And there are Facebook groups out there. I know a lot of people use Facebook groups, and Johnny graduates high school and everyone's kind of moved on and in college or doing other things now. That Facebook group kind of falls by the wayside or something like that. Like, we want this brand to be something that people see and immediately identify, regardless of if you are in Tennessee and you move to Arizona or vice versa, everywhere in between. It's a resource that's there, and it's free, and you can get access to that.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that
Yeah, and
covers.
the problem with the Facebook groups also is you have usually one gatekeeper controlling information going into hundreds of families.
That's very true. And you have to
Mm.
ask, does anybody know a physics teacher?
Hmm.
And you'll get like a bunch of responses, and then like 5 hours later, that chat is now buried in the page somewhere.
Yeah,
And it's like
yeah,
you've got to sift through all this stuff, and some allow ads and some don't, and
right, exactly.
Mm.
but that's been our challenge too, is like we've used some of those Facebook groups to try to reach out to educators, those people that are doing this work, to encourage them to hey, there's a free resource for you to help you find more people
Or
But some
help
of
more
them,
people find you.
yeah, but
Mhm.
some of them are even their gatekeepers there where they say, "Oh, no ads." It's like, well, it's not really an ad. Like I'm not
Selling
making any
anything.
money. I'm not
Yeah.
selling anything. So
Right.
I'm just trying to help
So
the
if you go
families.
to the Legal Defense Association and you convince one person, now you have access to every family who goes there to check about their state requirements. So you just have to make a
Yeah,
really strong pitch to these lawyers.
yeah.
Yes.
That's a great idea. We need to note that.
Yeah, I think I said hello to them at the last convention here, but
Yeah.
Hmm.
I didn't get into that.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll make a note real fast.
So we appreciate you guys' time. We'll make sure we have all the show notes. We'll have all the links that we can of anything we've talked about. And thank you for helping out any parents who whether they're homeschooling or they're just doing additional education. That's fantastic, and you're helping those who want to teach as well. So thank you guys for doing this. This is a big lift that you're taking on, and certainly it's going to add a lot of value. So anything we can do to help you guys, thank you for coming on. It's been great sitting down and getting to know you. Anything else, Tolly?
No, I think you guys are working on a very, very important project, and it's going to change. It's going to make homeschooling so much easier for the new wave of homeschoolers coming in. So, like Scott said, it's a lot of work. We can see it. I mean, you guys have a lot of
you can feel
a
it.
lot of
Yeah.
hurdles to jump over, but you started, and it's only going to get better from here. So, great job.
Thank
We're
you.
cheering
Thanks
you
so
on.
much.
Yeah,
We're
we'll
cheering you on.
All right.
Thank
Well,
you.
Thank you both, and the work that you do. I love the free market kids concept and the gaming aspect of everything. I just appreciate the platform and just introducing this to your listeners. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
If you enjoyed this podcast and if you found this valuable, please leave a review to help others find us too.
For those who prefer zapping sats, we love those too. We're on Fountain, we're on Noster, and we're on Orange Pill app.
Also, I host a women's only Bitcoin podcast called Orange Hatter. And the mission of that podcast is to reach pre-coiner women. So if you know of someone in your life that you would like to introduce Bitcoin to, check it out.
So Tali and I also don't have sponsors for this show. We are trying to build and run Free Market Kids. You can check out our products at freemarketkids.com. This includes the Bitcoin mining game Hodl Up, which is a great introduction to Bitcoin.
The school edition of Huddle Up is always available. We also have the 2024 halving edition. It's going to be super deluxe. Very excited to roll it out. It is available on pre-sale at a 21% discount.
Until next time, happy hodling.